Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, September 22nd, 2017. Tomorrow is, of course, September 23rd, and either the end of the world or the beginning of the end of the world or something like that, according to the scary, scary documentary that I totally saw and absolutely believed 100% just the other day. It's worse than watching a zombie movie before going to bed. Don't do it. I wouldn't if I were you. It's the last day of the week, of course. Time for us to get you prepared for a weekend of, if you are perhaps visiting with friends or relatives this weekend, shouting at one another about how stupid Donald Trump is and how terrible he is and how he's ruining the country, the world, and maybe just your corner of it, maybe the entire thing. No one's quite sure at this point. Tip of the hat to the North Koreans, which I didn't really think I was ever going to get around to saying. But they are masters of the English language, apparently, in North Korea. Everyone talking about Kim Jong-un's response to Donald Trump's speech at the United Nations, which I think we all knew was a mistake going in. And I don't know. I think the guy got owned. Rocket Man versus deranged dotard. I think we got to go with Kim Jong-un on that one. And what does it take in an American president to get people to root for the North Korean dictator against you? Well, I don't know. But whatever it is, Donald Trump's got it, I guess. We could go into the full response, but I really found almost nothing of value to it other than the use of this fantastic archaic term. And I got to be honest with you, there are a number of times where on this program I have, probably daily, have had to overcome the urge to describe Donald Trump using another word that conveniently also makes use of the TART suffix. So I thank the Koreans for giving me something that's at least marginally acceptable, though I'm sure we'll find out. This too is politically incorrect, but I've longed to be able to resort to a something tarred construction for Donald Trump, well, since the day he started tweeting, really, but even before that. But I would have left him alone to his stupidity, him and his stupid reality show. I didn't care what happened there, but injecting yourself into politics, it happens. You're allowed to do it, just like Jimmy Kimmel. Just don't run for president and ruin it for the rest of us. And if you do, we're gonna let you know how we feel about that regularly and loudly. Anyway, I have, of course, long since been convinced that it would be improper to have used the other unfair term. I don't think that dotard is unfair at this point. Well, frankly, I'm not so sure that the other terms were unfair per se, but I don't want to insult people who, have to deal with, well, you know what I'm talking about, mental retardation, the actual malady of it. But people who have to deal with that in their families, friends, or just are, people who care about what other people think about what they say. And it took a while to drop the habit. I was one of those 70s and 80s kids who just grew up saying that, and just like a number of other things that people grew up saying, it was wrong, and you had to learn to stop doing it because it was ruinous to people who didn't deserve it. So I did. But, man, there's that level at which you really want to stick it to this guy, and it just, you had to resort to more creative language. But leave it to the North Koreans. They are surprisingly innovative. I really thought that they would, maybe not have. Well, they got a good thesaurus. They imported a good thesaurus there. Well done. And everyone's talking about it. That's all I can tell you. I didn't pick up any news stories about it because, like I said, these two guys hurling insults at one another, not particularly newsworthy. Just we want to at least note that it's happening out there. Oh, look, I opened up Google News I don't know why. It's just what I do. That's the top story, of course. Let's see. New York Times treats it with this headline. North Korea hits new level of brinkmanship in reacting to Trump. Ooh, good opportunity to remind everybody that I think that's correct. It is brinkmanship, not brinksmanship, though that does flow a little easier off the tongue. I don't know why we all like to add that S. Linguists can tell us about that. There's also, let's see, they decided to do a fact-checking of Donald Trump's United Nations speech. I bet that would be somewhat interesting. I have other things, though, but I guess if we really run out of stuff, we'll go fact-check it. But the Washington Post, they're going to get my click this morning with a short history of dotard, the arcane insult Kim Jong-un used in his threat against Trump. What's the is there an accepted spelling or I don't know what you would say about this. Kim Jong-un, the spelling is the same. The letters are the same. I looked it up last night and I saw Kim Jong, capitalized Jong, hyphen lowercase un. And then there's one with no hyphens and capitalizing the U. I don't know what the convention is on that one, but maybe if any of you actually are Korean speakers, there are probably one or two of you out there, maybe you could tell us what the preferred English spelling is, if there is such a thing. Let me take a look at this. I'm curious about this. A history of dotard. And it's short, too. I don't mind it being long, but let's see. We have Rachel Chason. It's like Jason with a CH. And look at that. J. Freedom Dulac. That's a hell of a name. Is that a real name? Is this a bot? Is this a real person? Garance, do you know anything about this J. Freedom Dulac guy? Woman? Hold on a minute. Time out. I'm curious. I'm going to click on Washington Post. You got me. 2 clicks already this morning, and I haven't even read anything. This gentleman's name is J. Freedom Dulac. I don't know what the J is for. Nothing could be that outlandish that you feel like you have to abbreviate it to just J. If Freedom Dulac, that's freedom. You know, everyone loves freedom. That's a good one. Well, I don't know anything about him. Have we read anything by this guy before and not known it? Just curious. He's got some very intriguing stories to his credit here in the bio section about him. Let me read about him. Oh, look at this. J. Freedom Dulac plays point guard on the General Assignment News Desk. Very clever wording there. Previously an enterprise reporter at the Post. I don't know what that means, but I guess that means a little bit of everything. Covering history, gambling, people, and places. In a past life, he served as the style section's pop music critic. Freedom is his given middle name. I want to know what his first name is, but he doesn't want us to know. So, okay, that's what he wants us to call him. Do people say, hey, Freedom, or do they say, hey, J. Freedom? Anybody know J. Freedom? Any of you Korean speakers know J. Freedom Dulac? If you do, please tweet us, blah, 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 blah. You know the whole drill. Use the KITM hashtag. Let me get to this short history of dotard, if I may. Arcane insult. It is sort of arcane, isn't it? In the latest war of words between the United States and North Korea, Kim Jong-un did not pull any punches. Well, that's good to know. Let's see here. He may have pulled out an old dictionary, however. I will surely and definitely tame the deranged U.S. dotard. I forgot that he threw U.S. in there. The deranged U.S. dotard. Apparently pretty good. Okay, that's a nice one. Armando has some information about J. Freedom Dulac, or rather his assignment. I guess enterprise reporter is, as he says, the fancy new term for long form and longer reported stories as opposed to daily news. All the opioid stories are an example. Okay, that makes some good sense. Well, congratulations on that. That sounds like a good gig if you can get it. Okay. Well, where was I? Oh, yes, right. The deranged U.S. dotards. I love the extra U.S. in it. That is amazing. Where was I with this? Ah, yes. I will surely indefinitely tame, and that's very North Korean in the construction. The deranged U.S. dotard with fire. Oh, that's nuclear fire, I think. Kim declared in an unusually direct and angry statement published Thursday by North Korea's official Korean Central News Agency. The North Korean leader's warning about fire, which echoed President Trump's August statement threatening fire and fury, of course, was par for the course in the increasingly tense relationship. On Thursday, Trump announced new financial sanctions to further isolate the country as its nuclear and ballistic missile capabilities rapidly escalate. But Kim's use of dotard was what raised eyebrows. Deranged was pretty good too, though. Prompting people around the world to Google the old-time insult. I do want to see the Google stats on it. I'm sure they went through the roof. Merriam-Webster defines the noun as, quote, a person in his or her dotage. Doesn't really help. You know, they tell you not to do that when you're in grade school, but we'll get to that. We'll get to what it means, which is, of course, a state or period of senile decay marked by decline of mental poise and alertness. That's dead on, of course. But let's continue. Oxford's definition, because you got to have two sources. That's what Enterprise reporters are taught. An old person, especially one who has become weak or senile. That's pretty good, too. It's pronounced dotard, and searches for the term spiked during Kim's statement, Merriam-Webster noted. Here is their tweet about that fact. The word meant imbecile when it was first used in the 14th century and comes from the Middle English word doten, meaning to dote. Again, bad form. According to Merriam-Webster, you'll have to look up dote for yourself. But I think we all know what it means. It was used by Chaucer in the Canterbury Tales, and it appeared numerous times in William Shakespeare's work, including The Merchant of Venice, The Dotard of Venice, and King Dotard Lear. In the book Shakespeare's Insults, a Pragmatic Dictionary, dotard is linked to the French radoter, or radoter, I guess, which means to repeat things several times because one forgets. In the book Shakespeare's Insults, a Pragmatic Dictionary, you see what I'm doing there? You see what I did there? It's Friday. Woo, we're wacky. Okay. I won't really repeat the thing several times because one forgets. In the book Shakespeare's Insults, a Pragmatic... I'm kidding. J.R.R. Tolkien was also fond of dotard, which was popular as a pejorative in literature and beyond. The word was used to insult Martin Van Buren. So there's a presidential precedent here. Wow, presidents. What do you know? What do you think about that? Who preceded Trump in the White House by about 175 years, and by Union Army General George McClellan to describe his Civil War predecessor, General Winfield Scott, whom he did not like. Thank you very much for that one. Armando, more comments on the background here. What do we have here? Translations are always dicey. I guess we're talking about Kim Jong-un here. My favorite example is the Spanish curse word cabron. Should I be not saying this, by the way? It means male goat. So we're okay on that so far. But that's not a good translation. It's closer to other things that I can't say on the air, although, a-hole or bastard or son of a bitch. Thanks very much. Okay. Well, are you trying to get us in trouble here? It's not like Rochester's never heard these words before, but okay. Yes, you shouldn't though. Thanks. All right. Well, sorry about that, Rochester. But it means male goat. Literally, male goat. You can't come after me for talking about male goats. I don't think. All right. So where were we? In the book Shakespeare's Insults. I'm not going to let this go. A front page story in the July 25th, 1854 edition of the New York Daily Times notes that one member of Congress, Senator John Petty, referred to another, Representative Thomas Hart Benton, as a dotard, but the word has fallen out of favor. Oh, that's too bad. According to Google's Ngram viewer, it's a good thing I took a look at this. I'm like, according to Google's, it says Ngram. It's just capital N, G-R-A-M, viewer. And thank God the viewer was there. I'm like, oh, is this like a guy with an African name or something who works at Google? Ngram view? Oh no, Ngram viewer. Well, okay. I thought you were trying to confound me again. According to Google's Ngram viewer, I hope, which can search for words printed between 1500 and 2008. I quit. Google knows too much. This is it. Goodbye. The rest of the show will be done by a Google bot, which obviously knows what I'm going to say based on what I clicked on and put in Pocket. You should just have the damn thing just read you what's there in computer voice. Oh my God, they can search for words printed between 1500 and 2008. The use of dotard spiked in Shakespeare's time, then surged again in the 1800s before falling out of favor. Well, we like to bring those old-timey things back. There's a great resurgence in salty among the kids, and saucy, as it turns out, borrowed also from Shakespeare. But salty, that's a good one. Now, thanks to Kim, dotard is back. Kim used the insult not once but twice in his statement. Oh, okay. No wonder. Which was a response to Trump's address Tuesday to the United Nations General Assembly, during which the U.S. president called Kim Rocket Man, which is not even funny, and threatened to totally destroy North Korea, which is a war crime, of course. Here is the first time Kim uses the term. Action is the best option in treating the dotard who, hard of hearing, is uttering only what he wants to say. Again, a rather North Korean construction, but okay, acceptable. The second, of course, I will surely and definitely tame the mentally deranged U.S. dotard with fire. While the English version of Kim's statement calls Trump a dotard, oh yes, that's right, it's a translation, don't forget that. The Korean version actually calls him a lunatic old man, according to Anna Fifield, the Washington Post's Tokyo bureau chief who covers North Korea. Embedded here are her tweets on that subject, including the actual Korean text, which I guess is the definitive authority on this stuff. Kim Jong-un just released a statement calling Trump a mentally deranged U.S. dotard who will pay dearly for his UN speech. The English version of Kim Jong-un's fiery statement, fiery, get it? Calls Trump dotard. The Korean version says, I can't read Korean, but there's the letters and everything. She says that means lunatic old man, which is pretty close to how we understand dotard, although I don't know if we would say lunatic necessarily, but definitely addled. Okay. An Associated Press reporter who was once based in Pyongyang noted on Twitter that she'd been inside the Korean Central News Agency newsroom where they're using very old Korean English dictionaries, which might explain how the arcane word wound up back in the news. I like to think it was intentional. It's a great word. According to the AP, dotard is a translation of a Korean word. And this is spelled out in English letters, so I can say Nukdari. Nukdari? N-E-U-K. Nuk, I'm going to say. Dari. D-A-R-I. All one word, I guess. I don't know if it's all one character, but which is a derogatory reference to an old person. Oh, so we're going to have that problem, of course. Well, we shouldn't be ageist about this, etc. I knew something would come up about this, and it should. Insults, you should know what you're talking about when you're going to lob insults at people. Let's see. Sometimes it is translated into the neutral old people or omitted, depending on the context or the importance of the statement. KCNA, Korean Central News Agency, last used the word in February. We know this because what was it? Ngram? The charting from, it wasn't in print, was it? Okay. Last used in February. Are we talking about Nukdari, I guess? Last used in February to describe supporters of ousted South Korean President Park Geun-hye, whom it also called a Nukdari and a prostitute, by the way. Before that, KCNA called Park's conservative predecessor, Lee Myung-bak, the traitor like a dotard. So why did KCNA use the word again? It may have simply resorted to a Korean and English dictionary. Putting Nukdari into a popular online Korean English dictionary in South Korea returns two English equivalents. An aged old person, that's how it goes with aged people, and a dotard. It's worth noting that Thursday wasn't the first time anybody had referred to Trump as a dotard. It's good to give credit for this stuff. In May, writing in Esquire, Charles P. Pierce described the president as a blundering dotard. That is a good use of it. We should have credited him with that. I had no idea. On Thursday, Pierce tipped his cap to the North Koreans. Dang, tipped his cap. Didn't I say that at the beginning? Charles Pierce here yesterday saying, I would like to thank Kim for bringing dotard back. Other Twitter users predictably had some fun with the suddenly trending term, funny or die, tweeting dotard, a definition, a putative definition here, noun, a word you didn't previously know existed, but Googled today and said, damn, that's pretty accurate. Let's see, Charles Clymer saying the so-called president of the United States just got out-Englished by a guy raised in a Korean-speaking totalitarian regime. Hashtag dotard. Donald J. Trump, who is not really Donald J. Trump, but the parody account Bigly Prez, says, Donald Trump saying, I have the best words, Rocket Man. Kim Jong-un, hold my kov-fefe, dotard. Wow. And Nick Jack Pappas saying, Kim Jong-un called Trump a dotard, means he's used an English dictionary at least one more time than Trump. Ba-dum-bum. Mark Dice, a conservative media analyst, tweeted that liberals are now siding with the North Koreans with North Korea after he called Trump a dotard, meaning old senile person. That figures. Liberals hate us. That's true. We do. You're horrible people, and we do believe you are dotards. Are we siding with the North Koreans? We are reluctantly using the same words as the North Koreans because they have your man dead to rights. And you too, Mark Dice, you dotard idiot. He added, though, I should point out that they point out, and tip of the hat to the guys who wrote this thing up, he added an American flag emoji to his tweet. Woo! You got me. Burn! American flag emoji. Holy macaroni. You really showed me who's boss. What a bunch of a-holes. Well, goodbye, dotards. We're done with you for now. There's a dotard in Bill's tweet from this morning. Bill in Portland, Maine, of course, reminding everybody that the show is live. It's a little late for that now, but I retweeted it about when we were going on the air, and he says that I wonder, if perhaps there isn't a little dotard in all of us here in Nambia. Did we even get to that one? A wildly popular tweet from Josh Warren, who picked up on Trump's gaffe, other gaffe at the UN when he was speaking to the representatives of several African nations and kept referring to one particular non-existent nation of Nambia, which the White House, in correcting the transcript for the event, decided he meant Namibia. Although no one's really sure. There's a Zambia and a Namibia, but there's no Nambia. And I don't know which one he meant. And his speech didn't really make it particularly easy to figure that out either, at least not from my perspective. They may already have known what was in the script and what they put on the teleprompter or whatever script they gave him to read. It wasn't an off-the-cuff speech, I don't think. So it probably was Namibia, and he just didn't catch that first I, and he's never heard of Namibia, so it didn't prompt him. So Nambia is what came out. I doubt very much that he changed, maybe he's like dyslexic as well, and he changed the Z of Nambia, turned it on its side and made it Nambia, but I think he just misread Namibia. But does anybody know? All I remember is him saying Namibia's healthcare system is increasingly self-sufficient. Not even 100% sure what that means, but that was supposed to be sort of faint praise for Namibia, I guess. Or maybe that was huge praise. I don't know. Does anybody know whether Namibia's healthcare system is increasingly self-sufficient or whether Zambia's is more so, and he did mean them? I really don't know. Doesn't make a much of a difference. I doubt very much whether anybody listening to the speech cared one way or the other, but I'm sure it raised an eyebrow or two. Nambia? What does he think he's talking about on that front? I don't know. Let's see. Other things worth mentioning. Jimmy Kimmel hitting back again and again, and we think that's just great. Oh, Athena 5000 says he meant Narnia. That could be. We can't really be sure. And Justice is having fun with it as well. I'll see your dotard, and raise you 5 nattering nabobs from Nambia. Why not? Yeah, everybody's having a good time with this one. You know who else is having a good time with this one? But I can never figure out just what the hell he's talking about. I got to tell you, you are one imaginative guy. Prion, Chief. This is how you'll find him on Twitter. Chief Beef Loco, and you are tweeting up a storm at me constantly, and I cannot. You're very creative, and you are quick on the draw with the Photoshop. But all of his tweets are photo illustrated and everything. And he's just having so much fun with them, and with the spelling, I cannot figure out sometimes what the hell you're going on about. But he's tweeting all kinds of crazy pictures. Man. Well, look, keep up the good work. As well, how do I even share this one with you? Is pronounced dough turd, like dough turd, which is appropriate for. You're absolutely right. It's uniquely appropriate for Trump, and also completely appropriate for 1 million years dungeon. Oyabun, orange grab. Did you know? What is that? Chol means weed in Korean? Does it? No, I did not know that. There's no chance I would ever figure something like that out. Okay, well, moving on for just a moment. We've got a minute or so before we need to take our first break. We'll fill that with other comments that we've gotten in the background. Michael Musson says, I think Trump meant to praise NAMBLA in the speech, and that's entirely possible. You can't tell that that's definitely not the case. That's all I'm saying. You don't know where he might have gone next. Of course, I was, but when I got into the comments here, I was talking about Jimmy Kimmel. I'll try and keep that in mind and get back to that one, because Jimmy Kimmel's got some important backup in his opinion over the last day or two. And let me head into our break. We'll play our way into this 2-minute break. Armando, seems like you're available. I'd like to take you up on that. Let's talk about things for the next hour. We'll be right back, though, after station identification. Next. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We are back after our first break. I know Armando chomping at the bit there. I do want to get through one or two things here before we bring him in. He does mention that. Just trying to find out if you have something to discuss or maybe want to foil for the last half of the show, and that's always helpful. He says he doesn't have anything in particular to say, but then neither do I. That's the whole basis of my show. I do 2 hours of it. There's no reason I should prevent him from joining in, or for the rest of you, for that matter. Please let me know if you have found a story that you think belongs in our queue, though who knows whether I'll be able to get them all today. Let's see. I had mentioned also that Josh Warren, big fan of the show and good friend on Twitter, had a wildly popular tweet about the Nambia thing, just sending out. It's funny. I thought it was a good, offhand, fun reference to, you probably have seen it, to Coming to America, the Eddie Murphy Eddie Murphy film, which was quite funny, very popular. I remember it good. It was an 80s movie, is that right? And he just grabbed a clip from that and says, here's footage of the Prince of Nambia leaving the UN after meeting with Donald Trump. And he tagged me in that one, and I thought it was fun, and I retweeted it. And there's people it's really amazing what people find super funny. I mean, it was fun and a good joke. I'm not insulting you, I hope, Josh. But man, I love it when you do an off the cuff thing like, hey, that's kind of fun. And then people are tweeting. People have been tweeting this thing for 24 hours straight, and I'm seeing so many messages. I'm falling out of my chair laughing. I'm crying. I peed through 7 pairs of pants. Nobody actually said that, but damn close. I don't know. What do you think about that, Josh? Were you expecting to score big with this tweet? It's wildly popular. So congratulations to you. I'm glad I could share it with everybody. You never know what's going to hit. Hit people in the funny bone just so. Sometimes you feel like you really craft one that's just so clever, and people are like, oh, yeah. And then you do one that's like, okay, that's fun. And everybody goes wild for it. Whatever it takes, man. All right, everybody enjoyed that one. Let's see. Let's see. Where I left off was by mentioning Jimmy Kimmel. I just happened to have grabbed this one particular tweet about this stuff from this morning. Jason Helgerson, who tweets as Policy Wonk 1, saying, in response to National Review's story and tweet accompanying the story, which illustrated itself with a picture of Jimmy Kimmel. Why won't Jimmy Kimmel leave policy talk to the healthcare experts? There was a lot of activity on it. And of course, as soon as Jimmy Kimmel scored big points by criticizing, quite rightly, the Cassidy Graham, what are we calling it now? Cassidy Graham Heller Johnson bill. People gave him the old, stay in your lane, comedian. Just leave it to the policy experts. You just yuck it up on TV. Of course, lots of people immediately pointing out how stupid is that insult ever. It's always kind of dumb, and always kind of dumb when your president is a reality TV star. That doesn't help things either. But yeah, lots of good pushback on the pushback on that one. And this one in particular is saying, I completely agree with Jimmy Kimmel, and I'm, Jason Helgerson says, the New York Medicaid director. And what do you know? That would make him a bit of a policy wonk, just like his handle on Twitter says. And as a matter of fact, the story is that the Medicaid directors of all 50 states, plus most, if not all, of the U.S. territories, bringing the number, I think, up to 56 signatories from Medicaid directors, say, yeah, this whole thing is a bad idea. It's terribly written. It's ill-considered, if it's been considered at all, and doesn't deserve any place in our national policy. But that's not going to stop the Republicans, of course. And I guess they're out after Lisa Murkowski, trying to bribe her into joining them and supporting this bill. And as I read it this morning, I actually saw a good tweet on the subject from our good friend and one of our favorite cartoonists, Tom Tomorrow, who had tweeted out quite correctly. I think he makes a very good observation in this. The idea they were trying to bribe Lisa Murkowski with was essentially she got a hold of the early analyses of this thing and said, Alaska is a huge loser in this. We lose lots and lots of money, like most states do. States that expanded Medicaid. We didn't really talk about how dumb and backwards this thing is, but there's been this very irritating issue in swirling around this bill, which is essentially Republicans now view the states that opted to expand Medicaid and therefore got significantly increased health care funding from the federal government. That was the design of the bill. If you will expand Medicaid and cover more people with it, we will help you pay for that. So they did it, and the federal government did help them pay for it. They now look at that and say, that's not fair. How come some states got increased federal funding and others didn't? And the answer is you opted not to take it. Remember how dumb you looked at the time? I do. There was free money basically put on the table, and I know lots of deficit hawks will howl about that one. But the federal government offered you a ton of money. And the president at the time, Barack Obama, and many other level-headed politicians thought, well, it's very hard usually for people to resist the offer of money. They're economic people, economics. They had adopted the economic way of thinking, is how we'll put it. That's an actual book title, The Economic Way of Thinking. We had to read it. It was mandatory reading for incoming first years at George Mason Law School. I told you that was such a law and economics focused program. We had to the Economic Way of Thinking was mandatory reading on the way in for first years. I found it very useful. But yeah, people who understand economics or even people who don't, but just have some inherent understanding of it, if you offer people money to do something, they typically will do it. Or if you say there's lots of money available to you, they'll look into what does it take to get that money. And that was the idea. And lots of states, some red states even, took the money and expanded Medicaid and did a great job with it. And lots of people got coverage that didn't have it before. And the rest of that story. So Republicans decided that was unfair because they weren't getting that money, because their governors decided to forego taking the money. Yes, it means we'll get lots more money from the federal government, but on principle, we don't even want it because socialism. So they didn't take it, and now they're crying that it's unfair, which is about as dumb a thing as you could imagine. But it's happening. And so part of the Graham-Cassidy scheme basically is to set things right by punishing those states that did opt to take Medicaid expansion money and giving it to the states that opted not to take it in the form of larger block grants. Everybody's getting block granted, but the big losers in the the Cassidy-Graham bill are the people who decided to abide by the law in the last one and take the offer they were being given to help people. If you took the offer of help for helping people, you are a dirty socialist and will be punished under the new bill, which hopefully will never pass. But Alaska was among them. So Alaska stood to lose an awful lot of money in this bill. And she said, very reasonably, I think, why would I vote for this bill, which sucks so terribly for my state? And the answer to that was, well, you wouldn't. So what Graham and Cassidy have been doing to try to get her vote is, what if they offer to exempt Alaska from that formulation and just say, all right, for 49 states, the deal is if you took Medicaid expansion money, we're going to grab that back. And if you didn't take Medicaid expansion money, we're going to send you that block grant with a little bump in it because it's not fair that you didn't get that money that was offered to you before. It's not fair that you didn't say yes last time. So Tom Tomorrow pointing out that basically they're trying to bribe Lisa Murkowski to vote yes with what Alaska and the rest of the country gets to keep if she votes no. And yeah, like that's a good point. From Alaska's perspective, if I vote yes, Alaska gets X amount of money. If I vote no, Alaska gets that same X amount of money. Hey, that's a pretty good offer. Maybe I'll vote yes and ruin healthcare for millions of people across the country, but also not gain anything in particular for Alaska. What a terrific idea. I mean, that's not even a good bribe. Or maybe that's their defense at the end when they finally get brought up on charges. We didn't bribe her. We just offered her the status quo. That might actually work in a bribery case. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's actually kind of a pretty terrible offer. We've got to make great deals. And that's not a great one. Lisa Murkowski, I would give you this guidance, even though I don't really want to help you. I'd hold out for a hell of a lot more if I were you. They might actually offer it to you, but I hope that you will also not take that deal. But anyway, I digress. What do I digress from? I don't know. I have a couple other ideas that I thought I might bring to your attention for the weekend before spinning off into every other story. I think speaking to Armando in a few minutes will probably help us do our roundup section. But I got a dangerous article on my hands here, and I wanted to share it with you that makes a good weekend thinker. There's a bunch of other things that maybe I should just give them to you to consider for the weekend too. But let me try and get through as much of this as I can. It's from The Intercept. It is Matthias Schwartz on this piece here. I don't think we've called his name before, but this is an interesting piece, and it's not new. It's from March 30th, 2017. That's how you know it's awesome or interesting. I'm bringing it to your attention now at this point, March all the way into September. Why? The headline caught my eye. Facebook, you remember them? Failed to protect 30 million users from having their data harvested by Trump campaign affiliate. Facebook, of course, much in the news based on their whole role in helping or allowing, I guess, Russians to use their platform to do real life organizing and actually move people to rallies inside the United States. There's lots more about that. There's the dark Facebook posts, which definitely deserve some more consideration. We're going to have to talk a little bit about what they are and how they were used. But this one takes us back to some discussion we had before. But again, good reminder of things that we learned about Cambridge Analytica and the like, and the way they were harvesting information. Because there's been a lot of chatter about, Facebook and privacy and the people who rely on Facebook data and mine Facebook data, and are you having your privacy violated? It feels like you are, but are you actually giving up too much information willingly? That's also an undercurrent in all this. Let's take a look at this. In 2014, Matthias Schwartz writes, in 2014, traces of an unusual survey connected to Facebook began appearing on internet message boards. The boards were frequented by remote freelance workers who bid on human intelligence tasks in an online marketplace called Mechanical Turk, controlled by Amazon. I never heard of this. I feel like I might have read the words before, but I don't remember much about the story. Controlled by Amazon, that's pretty interesting too. Keep that in mind. The Turkers, as they're known, tend to perform work that is rote and repetitive, like flagging pornographic images or digging through search engine results for email addresses. Is that a job you can get paid for? Yeah, this is porno right here. Click. So is this. This is porn. Yeah, that's not a bad job. I don't think it pays very well there. It says that most jobs pay between 1 and 15 cents. I don't know whether that's every time you click on some porn, you get 15 cents, but even that's not so bad if you can stand it. Anyway, I don't know. I guess if you're really out there flagging the terrible stuff, there's some things that could upset you pretty quickly, I guess, and wouldn't be worth the 1 cent. Anyway, turking, that doesn't sound good either, makes us our rent money and helps pay off debt, one Turker told The Intercept. Another Turker, I'm going to start calling people Turkers, has called the work voluntary slave labor. Dangerous. But okay, moving on. The task posted by Global Science Research appeared ordinary, at least on the surface. The company offered Turkers $1 or $2 to complete an online survey. But there were a couple of additional requirements as well. First, Global Science Research was only interested in American Turkers. Second, the Turkers had to download a Facebook app before they could collect payment. Global Science Research said the app would download some information about you and your network, basic demographics and likes of categories, places, famous people, etc., from you and your friends. Some people would probably consider that relatively harmless, I guess. Our terms of service clearly prohibit misuse, said a spokesperson for Amazon Web Services by email. We learned of this activity back in 2015. We suspended the requester for violating our terms of service. Although Facebook's early growth was driven by closed, exclusive networks at colleges and universities, it has gradually herded users to agree to increasingly permissive terms of service. By 2014, anything a user's friends could see was also potentially visible to the developers of any app that they chose to download. Some of the Turkers noticed that the Global Science Research app appeared to be taking advantage of Facebook's porousness. And that's really what's at the heart of so much of what's swirling around Facebook now. It's porousness. Things that they just really didn't probably foresee happening when we just want to be able to rate hot chicks back when they were building the thing originally. Don't forget that that's the original use of Facebook, to be able to look at the pictures of college girls from the photo directories on campus and either figure out who they were or stalk them or talk about them or whatever. It wasn't a really high-minded thing, but okay. It developed into a very interesting platform, and they probably never gave that much thought to really, truly nefarious uses beyond gawking at fellow students, which in many ways probably was pretty nefarious all by itself, but not internationally nefarious, like undermining the sovereignty of other nations. That was probably beyond their thinking at the time. So it goes on here to say, someone can learn everything about you by looking at hundreds of pics, messages, friends, and likes, warned one of the Turkers, I guess, writing on a message board, more than you realize. Others were more blasé. I don't put any info on Facebook, one wrote, not even my real name. It's backwards that people put so much info on Facebook and then complain when their privacy is violated. Well, everyone should complain when your privacy is violated. Anyway, in late 2015, the Turkers began reporting that the Global Science Research Survey had abruptly shut down. The Guardian had published a report that exposed exactly who the Turkers were working for. Their data was being collected by Alexander Kogan, a young lecturer at Cambridge University. Kogan founded Global Science Research in 2014 after the university's psychology department refused to allow him to use its own pool of data for commercial purposes. The data collection that Kogan undertook independent of the university was done on behalf of a military contractor called Strategic Communication Laboratories, or SCL. The company's election division claims to use data-driven messaging as part of delivering electoral success. You by now have figured out that SCL has a growing U.S. spin-off called Cambridge, where Kogan is from, right? Cambridge Analytica, which was paid millions of dollars by Donald Trump's campaign. Much of the money came from committees funded by the hedge fund billionaire Robert Mercer, who reportedly has a large stake in Cambridge Analytica. For a time, one of Cambridge Analytica's officers was Stephen Bannon, Trump's senior advisor, now no longer his senior advisor, of course. Months after Bannon claimed to have severed ties with the company, checks from the Trump campaign for Cambridge Analytica's services continued to show up at one of Bannon's addresses, he has many, in Los Angeles. You can say Mr. Mercer declined to comment, said Jonathan Gastalter, a spokesperson for Robert Mercer, by email. The Intercept interviewed 5 individuals familiar with Kogan's work for SCL. All declined to be identified, citing concerns about an ongoing inquiry at Cambridge and fears of possible litigation. 2 sources familiar with the SCL project told The Intercept that Kogan had arranged for more than 100,000 people to complete the Facebook survey and download an app. A third source with direct knowledge of the project said that Global Science Research obtained data from 185,000 survey participants as well as their Facebook friends. The source said that this group of 185,000 was recruited through a data company, not Mechanical Turk, and that it yielded 30 million usable profiles. No one in this larger group of 30 million knew that likes and demographic data from their Facebook profiles was being harvested by political operatives hired to influence American voters. Kogan declined to comment. In late 2014, he gave a talk in Singapore in which he claimed to have a sample of 50-plus million individuals about whom we have the capacity to predict virtually any trait. Global Science Research's public filings for 2015 show the company holding 145,111 British pounds in its bank account. Kogan has since changed his name to Spectre. Is that serious? Oh my goodness. Well, that's just foolish of you, sir. Writing online, he has said that he changed his name to Spectre after getting married. My wife and I are both scientists and quite religious, and light is a strong symbol of both, he explained. That's way normal. Okay. The purpose of Kogan's work was to develop an algorithm for the national profiling capacity of American citizens. Why would they be doing that in Cambridge? Oh, I don't know. It's as part of SCL's work on U.S. elections, according to an internal document signed by an SCL employee describing the research. By the way, one bit of nuance that I don't know if it came across in my reading, Alexander Kogan, where is he first introduced in this story? Here we are. I didn't mention this, that Alexander Kogan, Alexander is Alexandr, Alexander, like the sort of Slavic spelling. Alexander Kogan. In other words, we're probably talking about an Eastern European, Russian, former Soviet connection of some kind. I don't know where he was born. Perhaps he's Western born. Perhaps his parents are not. I don't know. Or maybe they just like eccentric spellings of things. I don't know what the actual answer to that is. We could Google it. We could Wikipedia it. But, well, we'll just do that later on. Where were we with this? Oh, yes, he had given his talk in Singapore where he was claiming 50-plus million individuals in his database, changed his name to Spectre because he likes light, whatever. And the purpose of Kogan's work being to develop an algorithm for the national profiling capacity of American citizens as part of SCL's work on U.S. elections. We do not do any work with Facebook likes, wrote Lindsay Platts, a spokesperson for Cambridge Analytica, in an email. The company currently has no relationship with GSR, Platts said. Of course, that could mean anything. We have no relationship with them in the sense that we pay them money or anything like that. We do, but we don't have that relationship. I don't know what, it could be an outright lie. It could have ended the day before. It could mean I don't consider this to be a relationship, though everyone else in the world would. Who knows? Cambridge Analytica does not comment on specific clients or projects, she added, when asked whether the company was involved with Global Science Research's work in 2014 and 2015. The Guardian, which was the first to report on Cambridge Analytica's work in the U.S. election in late 2015, noted that the company drew on research spanning tens of millions of Facebook users, harvested largely without their permission. Kogan disputed this at the time, telling The Guardian that his Turker surveys had collected no more than a couple of thousand responses for any one client. While it is unclear how many responses Global Science Research obtained through Mechanical Turk and how many it recruited through a data company, all 5 of the sources interviewed by The Intercept confirmed that Kogan's work on behalf of SCL involved collecting data from survey participants' networks of Facebook friends, individuals who had not themselves consented to give their data to Global Science Research, and were not aware that they were the objects of Kogan's study. In September of 2016, Alexander Nix, spelled the normal Western way, Alexander, Cambridge Analytica's CEO, there's a lot of Alexanders there, said that the company built a model based on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Americans filling out personality surveys, generating a model to predict the personality of every single adult in the United States of America. And again, I remind you, as it turns out, a lot of these things were take the Facebook quiz to find out which Coming to America character you are. If you are about to take that quiz, don't do it. Which Star Wars character are you? Don't do it. I am not certain that that's actually the case. I've never seen that reported since we first learned that from, I don't remember what source, but it was linked at the time. I can tell you that much. But, I thought that was really kind of darkly evil genius brilliant, really. Building a database of a personality profile of everybody in America, if you can just get them to answer these doofy Facebook quizzes, and there's thousands, millions of people, and they take them all the time. They see on Twitter, I just found out what character I am from my stupid favorite show. You should do the same. Pretty amazing. All right, where were we with this one? Yes, so building a model to predict the personality of every single adult in the USA. Shortly after The Guardian published its 2015 article, Facebook contacted Global Science Research and requested that it delete the data it had taken from Facebook users. Facebook's policies give Facebook the right to delete data gathered by any app deemed to be negatively impacting the platform. It's because they're a huge platform and they can demand such things. I don't know whether people will comply, but they can demand it. The company believes that Kogan and SCL complied with the request, which was made during the Republican primary before Cambridge Analytica switched over from Ted Cruz's campaign to Donald Trump's. It remains unclear what was ultimately done with the Facebook data or whether any models or algorithms derived from it wound up being used by the Trump campaign. We demanded that it be deleted. And how can you tell if data has been deleted if you're remote from that location where it's stored? They just tell you it has been. In public, Facebook continues to maintain that whatever happened during the run-up to the election was business as usual. Our investigation to date has not uncovered anything that suggests wrongdoing, a Facebook spokesperson told The Intercept. Now, time out here. Keep in mind that this was an article written in in March of 2014. And you should keep in mind, furthermore, that the Facebook approach to the idea that there was interference by the Russians using Facebook has changed considerably as well. There was a tweet I saw and retweeted this morning from Brandon Wall. Brandon Wall is a BuzzFeed news editor, a BuzzFeed News dystopia editor. I didn't know that was even a vertical for them. And he tweets out, Mark Zuckerberg on election interference in November 2016 versus September 2017. Here from November of 2016, I think the idea that fake news on Facebook, of which it's a very small amount of the content, influenced the election in any way is a pretty crazy idea. Of course, now, September 21st, 2017, Mark Zuckerberg has this to say, we've built teams dedicated to working on election integrity and preventing governments from interfering in the elections of other nations. Now, I wish I could tell you we're going to be able to stop all interference, but that wouldn't be realistic. It says it used to be crazy that the idea that would even happen at all. Now it's unrealistic to even think that despite the fact that they've tasked people and resources with stopping it, they still will be able to root it all out. It's going to happen. It was crazy last year. It's totally going to happen this year. Well, no surprise there. I think we all have watched his position on it evolve, and rightly so, as more and more evidence was brought to bear that it did happen, that it happened at an enormous scale, and it had enormous impact. Anyway, as you know, that music means it's time for us to cut out for our second break for station identification. We'll finish up with this article quickly and maybe be able to speak to Armando about a minute from now. We'll talk to you once again on the other side of the break. We welcome you back once again to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Thanks for waiting with us through our station ID break. Let's get back to this article in The Intercept. Remember, we are looking at an older article from March in The Intercept about Facebook and their failure to protect 30 million users from having their data harvested by Cambridge Analytica and others of their ilk, I guess, or really all just the varied branches of the same operation, it seems. When we last left off, we were saying that Facebook, I guess, at some point confronts global science research and says, you got to delete all the data that you took from Facebook users. They said, sure, no problem, we did it. All of this took place during the Republican primary before Cambridge Analytica switched over from Ted Cruz's campaign to Donald Trump's. But it remains unclear what was ultimately done with the Facebook data or whether any models or algorithms derived from it wound up being used by the Trump campaign. I suspect there's some more evidence on that since March. But in public, Facebook continued, at least at that point when they published in March, to maintain that whatever happened during the run-up to the election was business as usual. Our investigation to date has not uncovered anything that suggests wrongdoing, says this Facebook spokesperson. Facebook appears not to have considered global science research's data collection to have been a serious ethical lapse, at least not then. Joseph Chancellor, Kogan's main collaborator at the SCL project and a former co-owner of Global Science Research, is now employed by Facebook Research. The work that he did previously has no bearing on the work that he does at Facebook. A Facebook spokesperson told The Intercept. Again, that was back in March. I wonder what Joseph Chancellor is up to these days. At that time, of course, he declined to comment. Cambridge Analytica has marketed itself as classifying voters using 5 personality traits known as OCEAN, the acronym OCEAN, O-C-E-A-N, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, the same model used by the University of Cambridge researchers for in-house non-commercial research. The question of whether OCEAN made a difference in the presidential election remains unanswered. Some have argued that big data analytics is a magic bullet for drilling into the psychology of individual voters. Others are more skeptical. The predictive power of Facebook likes is not in dispute. A 2013 study by 3 of Kogan's former colleagues at the University of Cambridge showed that likes alone could predict race with 95% accuracy and political party with 85% accuracy. Less clear is their power as a tool for targeted persuasion. Cambridge Analytica has claimed that OCEAN scores can be used to drive voter and consumer behavior through micro-targeting, meaning narrowly tailored messages. Nix has said that neurotic voters tend to be moved by rational and fear-based arguments, while introverted, agreeable voters are more susceptible to tradition and habits and family and community. Dan Gilmore, director of the Knight Center at Arizona State University, said he was skeptical of the idea that the Trump campaign got a decisive edge from data analytics, but he added, such techniques will likely become more effective in the future. It's reasonable to believe that sooner or later we're going to see widespread manipulation of people's decision-making, including in elections, in ways that are more widespread and granular, but even less detectable than today, he wrote in the email. And that's of concern for a number of reasons, of course, not the least of which is the item I had mentioned before about the use of dark posts on Facebook and elsewhere, which I think we've described in the past. But I guess essentially Facebook gives you the ability to do things. Well, actually, it gives you the ability to do things, at least on the Facebook platform, that are or were the subject of dystopian nightmares about net neutrality, really, about the ability to control the information that people see, both positively and negatively, right? In other words, you could, of course, use the internet. You always could use the internet to circulate fake news or something like it, right? Bad facts that don't stand up to research or debunking. But you can also use the power of Facebook's dark post limitations to prevent your bogus claims from being seen by anybody who would otherwise likely be able to debunk them for the confused masses who would believe them. And that's enormously dangerous. That actually, I've got a BuzzFeed story on that too. And I'm going to take a quick look at it to see whether it makes a sensibly short aside or whether it requires more analysis. I'm gonna just inject it at this point, I think. Hold on, Armando. I'm almost done. But I'm sure you'll be interested in talking about this and other things in just a few minutes. BuzzFeed with this story by Craig Silverman. I have to inject this as a side point here. Trump is using targeted Facebook ads to reassure supporters he will build the border wall. That's more important than it sounds when you get into the body of it here. The subheader explains a little bit of why I think it's so serious. The personal Facebook pages of the president and vice president are running dark post ads that promise a wall, not a fence, while asking for donations. It's pretty amazing. The President Donald Trump is using targeted Facebook ads to reassure supporters that he still plans to build the border wall after his recent public comments caused many to question whether he would keep his promise. You know, like, for instance, saying, what I meant was, first he announces there's money being appropriated right now to build the wall. And then people saying, well, it's really to repair areas where there's already fencing, et cetera, et cetera. Is that what you supposedly meant by the wall? And he was forced in public, where everybody was watching, to say, yeah, I do mean that. And that's okay. Sometimes, for instance, people in his administration say the wall's a metaphor anyway. So we all remember that story, although we didn't talk about that extensively on this show, but you would have remembered it happening. So does that worry him about his base? Is his base going to abandon him? Well, he might think that, but here's how he hopes to control some of that. He sends these dark Facebook posts that are not seen by anybody but those on his targeting list, his hardcore supporters, in which he says, there's been a lot of noise and a lot of rumors on this Facebook ad that comes from Trump's personal Facebook page. It says there's been a lot of noise and a lot of rumors. And then in all caps, we will build a wall, not a fence, along the southern border of the United States. The ad concludes with a pitch for donations, of course. That all caps declaration is in contrast to a widely discussed tweet last week in which the president said the wall was already underway in the form of new renovation of old and existing fences and walls. That led supporters such as Fox and Friends' Steve Doocy to ask, has the wall almost become symbolic? The personal Facebook pages of Vice President Mike Pence is also running a version of the ad. One difference between the Pence and Trump ads is that the VP's refers to fake news media, while Trump's calls out the mainstream media. Both ads include a dig against liberals in Congress. A White House spokesperson told BuzzFeed News that the ads are being run by the Trump campaign, even though it's on his personal webpage, etc., and referred all questions to it, that is the campaign. The Trump campaign, by contrast, did not respond to emails or phone messages about the ads. The ads are not visible on the timelines of the Trump or Pence Facebook pages. Don't go looking there. They are, therefore, they do exist. They are so-called dark post ads because they can only be seen by people the campaign chose to target with the message. In other words, only the people who were virtually guaranteed to believe it because they had told the Trump campaign, I'll believe whatever you say, pretty much. Now, of course, these things came to light, so to speak, only because the system's not perfect. If you create a fake Facebook profile that pretends to be a Trump superfan and sign up for all this nonsense, you'll start to see those posts that other people don't see. And if you're a reporter, you'll report it. That's probably what happened here. But the bulk of the people on the list probably are real, or at least bots who won't report you to the news media if they catch wind of one of these dark posts. So it's what's really amazing. It's not, I guess, necessarily all that amazing that a campaign structure would be telling one audience X and telling another audience Y, because that kind of happens all the time. It's horribly dishonest and it hurts when you're caught if you're a normal person, but he's not normal and this is not normal. But really to have the president of the United States publicly on Twitter, as dumb as it is, declaring, yeah, well, it's probably going to be a fence in some places, addressing reality, and then addressing his hardcore supporters who would be upset by that by saying, don't worry, that guy's a liar. I'm building a wall, not a fence. That guy, you mean you? Me, you. What's the difference? Can anyone really tell? I mean, come on, it's Facebook. But somehow it works for his supporters because they're idiots. So what are you going to do? Well, you ferret it out and hope that America rejects this out of hand because, the authorities aren't going to do anything about it. Anyway, like I said, the ads are not visible on Trump or Pence's Facebook pages. If you're a normal person and you go there, you won't see it. If you're a registered superfan, you will. In fact, you'll get a notice about it in your mailbox that says it's there, and you'll go and read it. Donald Trump is talking to me. This is the same type of ad Facebook recently acknowledged was purchased by a Russian troll factory in order to target Americans during the election. That revelation has caused lawmakers such as Senator Mark Warner to discuss the need to regulate online political ads, which will, of course, have the McConnells of the world rolling their eyes and groaning, oh, my God, regulation. An American can still figure out what content is being used on TV advertising, but in social media, there's no such requirement, Warner said, according to CNN. The Trump and Pence ads also highlight how politicians can use targeted ads to push a message to supporters that walks back or contradicts a public statement. If candidates and outside groups can say different things to different voters, it is harder to hold them accountable for campaign promises. Erica Franklin Fowler, director of the Wesleyan Media Project, which tracks political ads aired on broadcast television during state and federal elections, previously told BuzzFeed News. These ads are also an example of how targeting can miss its mark. Nancy Levine, an author of books about pugs, was shown both ads in her news feed and provided them to BuzzFeed News. She said she is far from a Trump supporter or potential donor. I wonder how I was targeted. That's interesting. Most everything I post on Facebook is of the F-Trump variety, Levine said. At BuzzFeed News' request, she visited the ad preferences page on her Facebook profile where anyone can view the interests the social network has identified for a user based on their behavior on and off the platform. To her surprise, Levine discovered her interests included Donald Trump and conservatism, as well as other outliers such as chainsaw. I don't even rake my leaves, much less use a chainsaw, she said. Dang. Well, that's very interesting. Maybe she liked the movie about chainsaw massacres. I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was an important point in understanding the way they were compiling lists and communicating their message on Facebook, even way back in, it helps us understand what was going on way back in March in this Intercept article we'll now continue with. Trump's Circle has been open about its use of Facebook to influence the vote. Joel Pollack, an editor at Breitbart, writes in his campaign memoir about Trump's armies of Facebook, quote, friends, bypassing the gatekeepers in the traditional media. Roger Stone, longtime Trump advisor, has written in his own campaign memoir about geo-targeting cities to deliver a debunked claim that Bill Clinton had fathered a child out of wedlock and narrowing down the audience based on preferences in music, age range, black culture, and other urban interests. Clinton, of course, had her own analytics effort, and digital market research is a normal part of any political campaign, but the quantity of data compiled on individuals during the run-up to the election is striking. Alexander Nix, head of Cambridge Analytica, has claimed to have a massive database of 4,000 to 5,000 data points on every adult in America. Immediately after the election, the company tried to take credit for the win, claiming that its data helped the Trump campaign set the candidate's travel schedule and place online ads that were viewed 1.5 billion times. Since then, the company has been de-emphasizing its reliance on psychological profiling. The Information Commissioner's Office, an official privacy watchdog within the British government, is now looking into whether Cambridge Analytica and similar companies might pose a risk to voters' rights. The British inquiry was triggered by reports in The Observer of ties between Robert Mercer, Cambridge Analytica, and the Leave.eu campaign, which worked to persuade British voters to leave the European Union. While Nix has previously talked about the firm's work for Leave.eu, Cambridge Analytica now denies that it had any paid role in the campaign. Let's see. Last bit of the piece here, I think. We're in the home stretch here. Yes, as a matter of fact, just hang on just a moment. I know, Armando, you've been waiting to go, and I think we'll be there inside of the next 3 minutes or so. In the U.S., where privacy laws are looser, there is no investigation, or at least there wasn't back in March, and I think we're getting closer to that. Although I don't know if Cambridge Analytica is itself directly under investigation at this point, or not to mention the looser network of other analysts that fed into it. Cambridge Analytica is said to be pitching its products to several federal agencies. Who knows whether they'll win, because some of the federal agencies are full of people who award contracts who, in fact, worked on the campaign and might be willing to funnel lots of federal money to Steve Bannon and the Mercers in exchange for all their help winning this, the ability to pass out federal funds. We'll see. Anyway, who are they pitching to? Among them, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That ought to be fantastic. We'll be making our war calls based on this. SCL, its parent company, has new offices near the White House and has reportedly been advised by General Michael Flynn, Trump's former national security advisor and a spy, by the way, on how to increase its federal business. That's not a good front face for you, by the way, guys. If you haven't jettisoned him yet, free advice, go ahead and do it. A spokesperson for Flynn denied that he had done any work for SCL, by the way. Years before the arrival of Kogan's Turkers, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg tried to address privacy concerns around the company's controversial Beacon program, which quietly funneled data from outside websites into Facebook, often without Facebook users being aware of the process. Reflecting on Beacon, Zuckerberg attributed part of Facebook's success to giving people control over what and how they share information. Over what they share information, I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean, but how they share information, yes, I understand that. He said he regretted making Beacon an opt-out system instead of an opt-in. If someone forgot to decline to share something, Beacon went ahead and still shared it with their friends. 7 years later, Facebook appears to have made the same mistake, but with far greater consequences. In mid-2014, however, Facebook announced a new review process where the company would make sure that new apps asked only for data they would actually use. People want more control, the company said at that time, it's going to make a huge difference with building trust with your app's audience. Existing apps were given a full year to switch over to have Facebook review how they handled their data. By that time, Global Science Research already had what it needed. Well, I feel like I guess it's entirely possible that we may have read this article before, but I feel like it covered a lot of ground that we had touched on before. But I do still think that there were either things I missed the first time or that are new bits of information. It's not concrete stuff that you'll find in newspaper reports and headlines on page A1 this weekend, but excellent background information and a great reminder of just how weird and insidious Facebook really is, even if they don't mean to be. Like I said, they started out with the, relatively maybe innocuous idea. Well, if you think that it's innocuous to gawk at co-eds without their knowledge, and that's happening anyway in those picture directories, even without computer assistance. But that only made it a little creepier, and from there it only got worse. But again, most people would probably consider the mission to be relatively innocuous. Of course, when it began making money based on its ability to deliver highly targeted campaigns, well, then they really wanted to refine things, and the more refined and highly targetable the data they had and the users they had were, the more money they could make, and that's where things, I think, probably started to get away from them. Okay. Well, I just wanted to get that one on the record, and I guess that bit about the dark posts as well. So doors open, and Armando, you're welcome to join, or as I saw you just say, maybe you wanted to join after the 10:30 break, but certainly welcome to do so ahead of time if you want to wait through the 2-minute break. Otherwise, if not, I'll cast about for some of the other things I put aside to share with you as extraordinarily important before we head into the weekend break. There are plenty of them out there. Let's see. One thing I wanted to bring you up to date on. We'll just do little tidbits between now and then. A tweet I picked up on yesterday about Price, Tom Price, and his high-flying ways. Of course, that continues to be investigated. He's now up to $300,000 worth of flights on at least, 24 occasions all over the country, of course, flying everywhere at taxpayer expense. There's been some amazing spin on that. Eric Erickson has, I think, the dumbest take on it. He's saying this is all about protecting Price. Liberals are mad that Price is making it harder to attack or assassinate him by flying on private jets rather than flying commercial as his predecessors had done. A spokesperson from the HHS department said that it was really about connecting him with real Americans. You see, it would be an unproductive use of his time to have him waiting in security lines where real Americans hang out, of course, in airports, and instead he would fly them directly to the places where the masses of Americans could get directly in touch with their Health and Human Services director, like the Aspen Ideas Festival or speeches before the San Diego Chamber of Commerce, wherever he was speaking at that point. By the way, his flight to Aspen, a documented fact, to make it there for the Aspen Ideas Festival, he had to get to Aspen from San Diego. And as I mentioned, our tweeter John Lamb here picked up on this from the Politico report, noting that he left San Diego to get to the Aspen Ideas Festival. What was he doing in San Diego? He was there giving a speech demanding that the federal government do something about wasteful spending. Can you believe that one? Armando is with us now. Let's get right back into this and any number of other topics. I don't know what was on your mind today, but
that one was funny though.
That was a pretty good one.
What do you say to a tweet like that?
Yeah. Also, a good point somebody else on Twitter made. I thought Eric Erickson used to be a member of the government should fear the people caucus, and he was usually cagey about that stuff. But remember, Eric Erickson is the guy who threatened to shoot census workers if they came to his door. He was going to, very pointedly, with his wife's pink shotgun, he was going to shoot them down. And yeah, he loves to be coy and cagey about that. The government officials should fear the people, meaning, of course, that they should always live subject to the reality that they might be physically attacked by outraged Americans for their intrusions into their lives and privacies and liberties. But now that Tom Price wants to fly around the country, spending $500,000, by the way, in couple of months on his flights to barnstorm the cities and tell everybody there's not enough money to pay for your health care anymore. P.S. I hate government waste. Got to get on a jet. See you later. On my way to Aspen. Believe this guy?
Yeah, I think that, look, Ericsson's a dumb guy, but he's not that dumb. This is just stupid stuff, and it's remarkably transparent. I think the explanation is I think Ericsson has a pretty close relationship with Price.
Oh, maybe.
Price is from Georgia, if I recall, as is Ericsson.
Right, true.
So I think that, as I said, Ericsson's a dumb guy, period. But this is so supremely dumb that you actually should look for the other explanation, which is his apparently close relationship with Price.
Well, there's been a long line of Health and Human Services directors assassinated, I think, starting with no one ever, right? So, not that it wouldn't be a great thing to drag the guy out and give him a piece of your mind once in a while, but don't kill him. Don't beat him up.
It's pretty simple. It's improper to do this. Now, what's the law say? Well, there's regulations that say that he should be doing it in a manner that is most cost effective.
Yes.
That is affordable, cheaper for the government.
Right.
And he has chosen the most expensive way of doing it.
Yes.
What I don't get is why doesn't Betsy DeVos just lend him her jet?
I don't know. Price is not poor by any stretch. He's been involved in enough insider trading that he's got several $1 million socked away. Well, he wants to keep it, I guess. Betsy DeVos could certainly have lent him a jet. Donald Trump could lend him a jet, but, he doesn't lend anything to anybody. I don't know why they would do that, but
he doesn't
the whole
lend
thing's
golf
crazy.
carts, David. Oh, you think he's going to lend a jet?
That's true. He won't even lend the golf carts for free that he already owns. Won't lend them for free to the Secret Service to guard him while he plays golf. He charges them for that.
What he golf carts to his meetings.
Oh,
those important meetings he has at the golf club.
Yes. Well, he does that. He does do that.
Can you
too.
believe they still say that he's going to important meetings?
Yeah, I believe that they still say it, but I know that he does nothing. He's been playing a lot or less golf, I think, lately. I don't know what he's been busy with, but he did discover that he kind of likes Camp David, which I think he thought was a dump. But he went there again recently, and I think he kind of likes the rustic Situation Room. He seems to like bringing people there and having cabinet meetings at Camp David.
The joke would be supreme that Trump is president if it wasn't so horrible.
Yes, well, sure. But
it's amazing. If you could say, who would be the person most ill-equipped to be president of the United States in the world? I think Donald Trump's in the top 5.
Yeah. Well, certainly now that we've seen him in the job, it's pretty obvious. But yeah,
Roy Moore or Donald Trump? Who is more qualified to be president?
I don't know if I can make these.
It's a close one.
Impossible
it's
calls.
Close.
Yeah, but he's not campaigning for him. He's campaigning for the other guy, which is really fun.
His Big Luther.
Yeah, that's a good nickname too, by the way. What should I call him? His name's Luther. What should I call him? Big Luther. Okay.
Very inventive. Very creative.
You dotard. Anyway, yes.
The dotard thing was hilarious. That is again. I told you about the translation. Yeah. I wonder what it feels like in Korean. What he said. That's the one point I was trying to make to you in my notes to you. Is a translation doesn't always work.
Right.
For really conveying it. That's why I used the Kagro to make it a controversial pronunciation, so maybe the FCC doesn't bother us. Kagro.
That's helpful.
It sounds like a car.
Yeah, it does.
But, that's a tough thing to call somebody in Spanish. I mean, if you want to start a
we got to take our break,
fight.
Armando. So we'll be right back after 2 minutes.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show on Netroots Radio. We waited through the break here with Armando, so we're all set to, we'll get back to our topic and then wander around a little bit. There's no reason to pretend we have an actual overarching topic here. Why bother with that, I say. Go on.
I wanted to add, because you read from the Cambridge Analytica story, and just add sort of my perspective on it. I think the targeting is an interesting topic, and it may have been important here, but I think just the dissemination and in the 2016 election was different than, frankly, almost any election I can remember. Certainly any presidential election. Remember what happens in 2016 is the whole crooked nonsense in the FBI email investigation, and Comey's egregious and unforgivable and inexcusable press conference in the summer, where he frankly does things that were improper. You know, we always talk about the Rosenstein memo that was used to justify firing Comey, and it had nothing to do with why Trump fired him. But the memo is right. Comey's behavior in the 2016 election was inexcusable, inexplainable, unjustifiable, and a firing offense. It's not why Trump fired him, but there was basis for firing James Comey.
Yeah,
he got fired because of his Russia investigation. Now, to get to the Cambridge Analytica, think of the way Comey basically said, "Yeah, she's crooked, but not criminal, more or less," or "I couldn't pin it on her on a criminal basis."
Okay.
So when you get that, and then you send all these crooked Hillary stuff through, and if you can target it a little bit, so much the better. The people that are more likely to be persuaded. And then you get the whole, remember, and yes, I'm going to throw this out there, Bernie not conceding, and all the claims of against primaries and everything was rigged and super delegates and crooked. There was this big morass of stuff, and then the emails start coming out from WikiLeaks based on Russia's hacking of the DNC and then the hacking of Podesta, and just turning this whole melting pot of crookedness. So whenever you're just firing more and more crooked stories, and it's all just beat around and given credibility by Comey's inexcusable behavior, and then the New York Times doing what it did, I just think it was a perfect stew for Facebook actually really being amplified as being very, very powerful here. And in that time frame particularly, it's hard to pin it down to just Facebook, but Facebook, what I believe was, and what Cambridge Analytica was able to do for Trump in that time frame, of what Russia was doing, either colluding deliberately or inadvertently with the Trump campaign at the time, made the Facebook stuff really powerful in 2016.
Well, I think so. I mean, it's enormously. You would think you could have an enormous influence. These dark posts, in particular, I think, are pretty insidious. Not just because, and I think it would be bad enough, the fact that it gives the ability to a guy like Trump to sit as president and to make essentially what amounts to him to be public speeches, the way he uses Twitter, saying this is the reality of the wall and what's going to happen. One, Mexico isn't paying for it, and we're appropriating money, and we're using that really to build and repair sections of already existing fencing, and that's okay because that's what I really meant anyway. And for everybody, everybody instantly recognized that and said, that's laughable. His supporters are going to go crazy. And then we find out, according to polling and extensive series of interviews in the major newspapers, look, they're not going crazy. Trump supporters still love Trump. And we say, oh, there's just nothing that'll shake these people's faith. And now we find out, well, it's not necessarily just that they have so much faith in Donald Trump. It's that he is on the side, invisible to the rest of us, saying, don't worry, I'm only saying this for the rubes. I'm definitely building the wall. It's going up right now. It's huge and beautiful. And then people say, why wouldn't I believe that? It came from the official personal Facebook page of Donald Trump. He's the president, for God's sake. He wouldn't say this to me unless it was true. But it's the rough equivalent of, telling people, listen, I'm contacting you. I need you for a secret mission. Don't tell anybody, but you're working for the CIA now. I need you to go and vote for Luther Strange. Don't ask why. It's a secret mission. You, as a patriotic Alabaman, I'm contacting you. And, there's a certain segment of the public for which that's going to work. Oh, my God, the president is personally calling me. I mean, you think about how much money they spend trying to make people believe that. As dumb as it is, wow, I got a robocall. Barack Obama called me. Holy cow, I can't believe it. Or look at my email. He wants me to sign Michelle's birthday card. I'm so honored. There's a segment of the population for which that works. And if you can identify them and send them those things, one, that'll work. And apparently I'm part of that population as far as the DNC is concerned. Hey, David. What? Oh, my God, it's Barack Obama. What, Barack? Do I want to go to dinner with you in New York? Yes.
They are annoying, those emails, I must admit.
But they work.
I just delete them. I never even look at those. They are annoying.
Yes, and for some people they work, or even if, for people that doesn't necessarily, that's not the approach that they're taking with the dark posts, but the idea that the president can make a public declaration and also very easily, without doing anything special, target super fans with something that says, don't believe what I said in public. The secret is I'm really doing, what is that? What else can we do with that? I'm not, okay, I've finally come to understand it's impossible for us to win a worldwide thermonuclear exchange. As sad as this makes me, I'm going to have to give a wide berth to this idiot in North Korea. Don't believe it. I'm launching the codes. Here they are for you. Shh, keep them secret. X, 974Q, and people will be running around saying, the president messaged me last night, we're launching in the morning. I can't believe it. Hallelujah. Kill all my black neighbors because there's not going to be anybody around to prosecute me to come tomorrow. Oh, my God. Who knows what could happen with this stuff? They already think the world's ending tomorrow, as it is. As it turns out.
Yeah. Yes, the rapture.
Yes, or one version of it. I think a giant dark planet, like dark Facebook posts aren't enough. A dark planet is going to wander into our solar system and tear the Earth apart with its gravitational field, possibly. No one has seen it because it's dark. So, you know how it is with astronomy. You can't see anything dark, right?
Right.
It's like, just like using big eyes. If I can't see it with my eyes, it doesn't exist. I don't really, I won't get into the details of that theory, but it's extraordinarily dangerous to give any president the ability to do that. And imagine giving it to a congenital liar and con artist like Donald Trump. Well, you don't have to imagine it. It's really happening.
I honestly would love to see an analysis of everything Donald Trump has said and tell me the percentage of what he said that is, on questions of fact that are true. If it's 20%, I'd be surprised. I bet you. Yeah. There's never been a bigger liar in history.
No, not as
that I know.
Not as president.
He lies
maybe
about
just
everything.
as anything. Yeah, it is crazy. I keep coming back to my favorite line about I should find out who did it so I can attribute it. Finally, the one about him lying about what time it is just for the practice. he's sick. He's a disturbed individual. That's all
he
there
is. He's mentally ill. I mean, he lies about stuff he doesn't need to lie about.
Yeah.
I don't get how that doesn't. I know people say it, but it's the central. I mean, besides being, I would say he's crazy is the number one attribute. Attribute that I don't mean it as a good thing. I mean, what defines Donald Trump? He lies about everything.
Yep.
I think is number one. He's crazy is number two. I think believe it or not, I think he's a bigot is number three.
Yeah.
In terms of defining who he is. I know that's weird. But I do think that the fact that he lies about everything and is mentally ill are the most important attributes or things about him that matter here. Because there's anything he says, you look at his tweets seriously, just do. I know they've found 1,500 lies he's told this year or something like that. But I would say, how many things has he said that were true? Is it 50, 75?
I don't know.
It's not many.
I don't know what he talks about. That
it started
doesn't
with
include
crowd size, in terms of him being president.
Yes. In office, yes.
In office, it starts with crowd size, and it hasn't stopped.
Now, meanwhile, Sean Spicer apparently in interviews, now that he's casting about for mainstream acceptance and employment, I guess it was asked about all of that, and he says, "Yeah, I don't think I ever knowingly lied for the president. Like, but
sure
day one you did. The crowd said you could see that wasn't.
Well, there's two explanations. Either you're the dumbest man in the world, which is possible,
it's out there,
or you lied a lot. Almost every day you lied. Not almost every day you lied.
Yeah.
I mean, and obvious lies. It starts with him of the crowd size, but day after day after day there were lies.
Yeah.
So all he does is lie. Because you have to lie, because the guy you're working for, all he does is lie. So you have to lie to cover his lies.
He demanded it. He was only happy with you when you were exceeding your authority as a if you consider yourself a truth teller. He only gave you praise for your performance when you said outrageous, dumb stuff and attacked the press and lied to do it. So you continued to do that.
Yeah. Listen, you and I'm going to switch gears on you because I think it's somewhat interesting. The other day we were talking about, DACA, but I'm going to ask it in a different section here, in a different context. And it's about the health care bill, this Graham Cassidy thing, and the rush to beat September 30th because, as I understand it, the Senate parliamentarian has declared that the reconciliation instructions for the health bill expire on September 30th, and therefore they can't do reconciliation after September 30th.
That is the current operating thinking.
And yes, and I know that's something that you think is misguided, at least in part. Why?
Well, I don't know if
why are we wrong?
I don't know that it's misguided. I mean, the parliamentarian says that, and that's you kind of have to accept that as the baseline authority on this. I've never really understood entirely why they do some of the things that they do with respect to reconciliation. I mean, at this point, I no longer think there are any rules to reconciliation. I don't know why.
That's where I'm getting to. I have questions about that as well. For example, as I recall, the parliamentarian ruled the mandate as germane. The repeal of the mandate, which is also in this bill, but was also in the skinny repeal. How in God's name is that a budgetary item?
That's budget neutral? I don't know. I mean,
not that it's budget neutral. I mean, I'm just saying it has nothing to do with the budget. In theory, it's just
I mean, I guess it's
a law that says you have to do this.
I suppose there's a revenue.
Well, there could be. There's a penalty if you break the law, but that's like saying passing a law for a crime that has a fine is budget related.
I mean, I guess, I don't know if I agree with that call necessarily, and I haven't seen the logic on it. And we don't usually get to see it either, by the way. It's something they still hold pretty close and don't often share the reasoning, which makes it difficult to read this stuff.
Why could I just attach a fine to any law and then say it's budget related?
I don't know, because I don't know what the parliamentarian said. I mean, normally I wouldn't have made, based on what's publicly available, I don't know that I would have made the same call as the parliamentarian with respect to the mandate, but the call was made, so I have to assume that there's something out there. Like, for instance, like I said, there's no rules left anymore, and I don't just mean that eventually a majority in the Senate can overrule the parliamentarian or replace the parliamentarian or create new precedent in the face of the parliamentarian's objection, all of which is true. I mean stuff like every time, one of the essential elements that's always included in reconciliation instructions in a budget resolution. Reminding everybody, reconciliation only happens if it begins with a budget document, totally separate, that says the following committees are instructed to report savings of the following levels, and then it gives a date, by a certain date. In other words, they try to be very strict. Reconciliation only works if you follow the rules. The rules say it start with the budget resolution. The budget resolution has to do the following things: which committees will save money, how much money will be saved at a minimum, and the date by which those committees are supposed to report legislation achieving those savings, that minimum savings. And that date, just to stick to the question of dates, is routinely ignored and almost always missed, and without any consequences whatsoever, which tells me only that the dates don't mean anything to parliamentarians. There's not a single part, not in the last 10 years has there been a reconciliation bill that's met the dates, the deadlines given in the budget resolution. So it's amazing to me. I don't understand the process by which parliamentarians came to ignore one of only 3 basic types of instructions laid down, rules laid down for the use of reconciliation. In addition, Graham Cassidy and the original attempt by McConnell both fail to meet the second of and the third. So there's 3 basic kinds of instructions: what committees will do it, how much money will be saved at a minimum, and by what date it needs to be done. Neither of the 2 Republican bills were reported by any of the committees named. They missed all the deadlines named, and they apparently achieved, though, the third part, the savings at a minimum that was named. And there's no explanation in publicly available from the parliamentarian this time or any time previous as to why those dates don't matter and why the references to the committees don't matter. But everything else is strict. We got to have a bird bath and nobody knows how it works. And so I don't know. September 30th, the theory is, well, a budget resolution is good for only, it's relevant to only the fiscal year for which it's passed. We're talking about the budget resolution for fiscal year 2017. Fiscal year 2017 ends at midnight on September 30th. And so the thinking is that the reconciliation instructions for fiscal year 2017 should end with fiscal year 2017. That does make a certain amount of sense, but no other deadline with regard to reconciliation has meant a goddamn thing to any parliamentarian ever. And the fact that it was a mystery, well, we don't know what the parliamentarian's going to say. How will the parliamentarian rule? For a while there was mystery. Maybe it will be September 30th. Maybe it will be longer. We don't know. If it was as simple as, well, they expire with the fiscal year, there would be no mystery. We wouldn't have been picking our noses and sitting around waiting for the parliamentarian to tell us whether she is going to stick by the September 30th date, as some people think, or whether, like other pending legislation of any type, it exists as a live, viable option through the end of the Congress that passed it. In other words, to adjournment sine die, which is expected in late 2018. My theory has always been, I don't know why the fiscal year 2017 budget instructions, if the dates don't matter in the instructions, then the date of the end of the fiscal year doesn't matter either. Besides which, you can just pass the fiscal year 2018 budget resolution with the same instructions plus some other ones in it if you want to treat two subjects. So I don't know why they wouldn't just do that. But all of this is such a mystery because the parliamentarian doesn't have to publish, precedents. So there we go.
That's really pretty outrageous if you think about it.
It is.
I mean, if you're going to let this person, and this is the way our Senate, that's a constitutional body, shouldn't there be some transparency on what the heck the parliamentarian's saying or doing?
Yeah. There should be.
Yeah, I mean, there should be a lot of things, obviously.
But this is
there ought to be a law.
This is work product, decision-making work product, and I could see some need to keep it closely held, but why after the fact we can't get the decision and the reasoning behind it? Wouldn't it help to know why it took so long to decide that the end of the fiscal year was the end of the viability of reconciliation instructions? Wouldn't members in the future want to know that? And if it's a cut and dried rule, it would help you plan. I mean, does the fact that it took so long implies that there could be a way to write reconciliation instructions, and this may yet be true, that there could be a way to write reconciliation instructions that would last for 2 years instead of just one, or 2 fiscal years instead of one. And it's entirely possible that the wording has something to do with it. Just as they claimed way back during the consideration of the Affordable Care Act, that the wording of the instructions was what was at the heart of the parliamentarians' decision in 2010 to agree with Byron Dorgan and say so-and-so house has to go first. It wasn't Byron Dorgan. It was Kent Conrad, who said the House has to vote first and then the Senate can go. But if the wording had been different, it could have been otherwise. It wasn't the fact that you can't pass a reconciliation bill that deals with an as yet unsigned law. It was that the wording forced it. But everyone came out with the opposite conclusion, and we're going to do it wrong next time because of that.
I'm always fascinated the fact that the reconciliation process is in fact enshrined in legislation, the Budget Act.
Yeah.
The Byrd Rule isn't some norm. There's a law that talks about reconciliation and how it can be used for the budget purposes. It's in a law.
Yeah. But presumably the law says something about the dates that they give for deadlines for the committees, but I guess it's not an interesting thing that they say.
I just think that there is a law, and what happens is when there's a law, generally there needs to be some recourse. And this Roberts Court says, turn standing upside down. I just can see whatever passes out of this being challenged under the Budget Act.
I guess so.
And what are they going to say? It's a political question. The Senate controls its process. Well, no, there's a law. There's a law. It says things. Mm-hmm. It says when you can do something like this. Like, for example, I don't agree with the parliamentarian's decision on the mandate. Do I have standing? Who's standing to challenge that? I don't think she's complying with the budget. I think she's a she. Might be a
he. She is a she.
She's a she, right?
Yes.
Okay. So why that has Budget Act implications? Who has standing to challenge her decision?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe nobody.
Why only the Senate as the institution, presumably? I mean, what happens? What if the Senate, McConnell put it to vote and overruled her? I guess what you're saying is in the first instance, well, you could just fire her. You don't have to take it to court.
True.
You can keep firing somebody, but that can't be what the Budget Act envisions, firing the parliamentarian if you don't like what she decided. Get it?
I don't know. You would think that wouldn't be in the first instance.
You see what I'm getting at? I mean, putting this into a law changes things. In my view, it changes things.
Yes.
But maybe it doesn't. The emoluments clauses in the Constitution. Nobody seems to care about that.
Right. So no one. Yeah. But they do. But they just can't bring any case about it. By the way, I guess somewhat related. Maybe I don't know. I haven't read the article yet, but the headline caught my eye. I'll throw it out there for people to read. Jonathan Chait in New York Magazine saying the Republican plan to repeal Obamacare for everybody but Alaska might be unconstitutional. And it certainly feels like it should be. I didn't read the argument that it is, but that may be out there too. But again, so who would have standing to challenge that if they say, it might be unconstitutional, might not be? Let's find out. Let's pass this thing. Do Alaskans sue? Do everybody else sue? Does nobody have standing to bring the thing? Well, we'll have to review what Chait's thinking is before I can figure out who gets to sue, but it's out there. I'll just throw that out there. We won't have time to review it today. We can read it over the weekend and discuss whether or not Chait's right or whether Graham cares. But a bunch of amazing implications to all this, not the least of which is nobody gets to read why the parliamentarian says what they say.
Yeah, I think, that's a big deal. And of course, power, political will is what would be needed. But of course, that's what's needed now. They don't need any magic tropes at this point, unless the parliamentarian rules some of these things problematic. For example, one of the key features that's being argued about is the EHB, the Essential Health Benefits waivers, which includes the ban on discrimination for pre-existing conditions, which is a real hot button. That strikes me as violation of the Byrd Rule, but my recollection is that in the Skinny repeal, the parliamentarian ruled that was not a violation. But my memory may be wrong.
I don't think that was struck out, and there's no real clear reason why that wouldn't just be policy making, which is ordinarily forbidden in a reconciliation bill. But again, I wish we had the precedent written out before us, but they don't provide that.
Again, why? If the EHB isn't Byrd violative of Byrd, then what is, and how, and why? You're right. Remember they announced all these. Well, she said this is Byrd compliant. This isn't. This is. We have no idea. And frankly, when you looked at the 5 things and the differing decisions, I frankly found no logic in her decisions at all.
No, I mean, that happens. Of course, you're familiar with it with courts. A court has said this. It doesn't make any sense. They point to what they're talking about, but they are
But they have to write an opinion.
Yes, they at least have to do that. And I think that there's a written product, but it's only handed to senators, and they don't share it. Like CRS reports, there's a bunch of things that they just don't feel the need to share and are not obligated to for various reasons, and it's not always a good one. But I don't know what the answer is. I don't know why the reason is that they said it was not a violation of the Byrd Rule, and so I can't help. And sometimes the stuff leaks out, but not always. But we're also out of time.
Well, David, this ends another edition of What Grinds My Gears.
Yeah,
and that's a good way to end the weekend. Thanks for letting me vent.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on and helping carry the burden.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You do the same. Hopefully the world doesn't end and we're all still here once this thing is over. But I don't know, a lot to think about for the weekend. By the way, one thing I didn't get to cram in that I thought was worth thinking about, Jessica Schulberg. I know I'm horning in on your time here after show, guys, but Jessica Schulberg, who writes for the HuffPost, foreign affairs reporter, I thought had an excellent point. She says, what a spot-on lead, grabbing from the Washington Post, the Tokyo Dateline piece here. Kim Jong-un's regime tells the North Korean people every day that the United States wants to destroy them and their country. Now they will hear, or in fact have heard it, from another source, the President of the United States himself. Just a little reminder of how dangerous it is for Trump to be walking around making these idiotic threats. They basically validate everything that the North Korean dictator has told the North Korean people for a long time. This stuff happens from time to time. I have more thoughts on that. Maybe if we still exist on Monday, we can come back and discuss some of those things. But why don't I use the rest of the time to tell you what you're going to be discussing when you stick around, as I know you will, for the after show coming up next year on Netroots Radio, as hosted by Wink and Justice. Here's what they've got for you. German researchers find evidence that American right-wing trolls are meddling in their upcoming election. Trump supporters doxed thousands of anti-racist protesters as part of a disturbing harassment campaign. And an exclusive report by Foreign Policy reveals, I'll tell you what, after this.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Let me tell you what they found out. Foreign Policy reveals that Russian propaganda outlet Russia Today tried to purchase thousands of Twitter handles to covertly influence the 2016 election. Although they weren't that kind of outlet. Well, I guess they are. There's much, much more, of course, coming up with Wink and Justice on the After Show right here next. We'll see you next week.